Hello, this is the Harboring Light. I'm Mary. I give a conservative perspective about the world around me. All right, so before I get into everything, I want to give an immense thanks to the sponsor, Matcha. I really appreciate all of everybody that is just a wonderful staff there. And then can't stress enough how great the blends are. They have so many different options to choose from. It's hard to pick. And as I said, I picked for Matcha because I like what they stand behind, and it's just really helpful to the aspects of keeping up with your well-being, your well-balance. You see today that's on a downturn with the aspects of taking a lot of pride in your health, and it's just great to have a company like Matcha on your side with balanced health and the aspects of understanding that's really to your well-being and benefit. All right, so you get 15% off when you use the promo code The Harboring. All right, so other platforms that I'm on Spreaker. To start out, much thanks to Spreaker and the other platforms: Spotify, Pandora, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, just to name a few. All right, so with Friday in the midst of Halloween is really knocking on our doorsteps, I am going to talk about something different on Wednesday to wrap everything up with the Halloween theme for this month. Well, today's topic, or whenever you listen to me, is about ghosts in the origin. Here we go. All right, so before I get into the midst of everything, I want to give my perspective. Now, you can get into the 10 fat, excuse me, the 10 hat, weird conspiracies with the aspects. It's easy to get there when you talk about, ghosts or the supernatural and so forth. But, on the other hand of all of these things, there is some truth behind the aspects of the afterlife and what happens and what's our fate. And so there's a lot of different accounts about the aspects of that, and there's a lot of different beliefs about the aspects of that. When you go, in this case, what I'm talking about, and from most of it has to do with Mesopotamia, Egypt, and so forth. The different belief system is that essentially how that leads to, when in the living, when things are not being taken care of, or things are ill forgotten, done in bad faith, that carries on to the spirit, and that's how you manifest the aspects of a ghost. And so there's countless imagery, and where that be in the literary form, where that be in TV, and where that be would be in movies. And the best examples here to me that comes to mind at the time here is the series Ghost. Now, I would recommend to look at the British version of it, because that's essentially where it comes from. It's unfortunate but it's one of those things here. Bear of the beast, I guess. The way of the beast, they say. When translations get lost, when you are, perpetuating certain agendas. Now, in the UK version, they really go into the aspects of telling a full arc about who these people are, what their lives were, and really using the wit of carrying on with serious subject matter to kind of bring light to everything else. And that's really what is at its height and its best about British humor. And what is really appreciative when you get in the aspects of going on with being persecuted because of speaking your mind about certain things. And this is a real factor that is happening in Britain, unfortunately, at the time. And now, and it happened, before now, but it's just really, in your face more now. If you're interested in understanding these things. And, really good about the aspects of being very honest and just witty at the same time. And when it comes to humor, and it's just a punchline kind of speak, but it's very cunning in the way that the comedy is unfolding in the series Ghost. And so it's a stark transition to the aspects, for example, spoiler alert if you haven't seen it, but if you haven't seen it by now, it's just one of those things. You're either not interested, or it's just you want to see it at your own leisure or your own pace. Anyhow, there's a particular character that has to do with the aspects of the business world, and this particular character was more prevalent. They translated this into the American version about everything, but the British version is very, very unabridged, and is very honest to the aspects of a certain decade. If y'all can get with the high hair and everything, if y'all know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm saying. If you know, you know. And so they really don't shy away. And then they didn't even shy away from the aspects of talking about the monarchy and around that time, and the aspects of, elitism and class systems and all these things in the British version. And they more in the American version is more about the aspects of playing with taboos versus, and then the aspects of liberation versus, being candid about the aspects of the American history here. So, really, to sum everything up, there really is a point being to the aspects of the imagery of ghosts and the mainstream conscious matter when it comes to the topics of saying there's something to the aspects of unfinished business. All right, with this said, I'm going to get into all of the facts about ghosts and the origins. Here we go. Okay, so of course, all the sources will be provided for you in this particular episode. In all the episodes, but the sources will be provided. All right, so here we go. All right. Okay. We got right here. It says, now I'm going to read from the AI version, and then I'm going to pull and go further in depth about everything. All right, so the concept of ghosts has an ancient origins, with the earliest recorded beliefs dating back to Mesopotamia between 8,000 to 8,000 to 2,000 BCE, where both textual and visual evidence of ghost beliefs exist, including instructions for dealing with them. So the Sumerian and Babylonian civilizations were among the first known to believe in ghosts. And so it's quite interesting with the aspects of this. Again, you're going to see this thing with saying you have to, if anything is off point with the aspects of the burial ritual, of a certain person or so forth, that in itself will curse the person's soul, and they will be, plagued to wander around as a ghost, essentially. All right, within the idea that improper burial or unresolved concerns could cause a spirit to return to haunt the living. This belief is also reflected in the Epic of Gilgamesh, one of the oldest known literary works which mentions ghosts and the afterlife. Now, the epic tale of Gilgamesh is considered to be the inspiration, also, from what I understand, the inspiration of different literary works, and then also with the aspects of the greatest aspects of text, which would be religious text with Christianity too. So in ancient Egypt, the soul of the Ka was believed to continue existing after death, but if proper burial rituals were not performed, the spirits could become restless and haunt the living. And so with the aspects of Egyptian, I wouldn't necessarily say lore, but I would say belief systems and stuff. It's centered fondly around the aspects of that our present selves is really a manifestation of what's going to happen in the afterlife. The afterlife is pushed heavily in the aspects of Egyptian culture here. It's quite interesting, and how that translates into other formats of different cultures too. All right, so the spirit could become restless and haunt the living. Numerous texts contain spells and prayers to protect against such vengeful spirits. Similarly, in ancient Greece, the dead were thought to return as spirits if denied a proper funeral. And the Odyssey, which describes Odysseus summoning ghosts from the underworld to gain wisdom. So the Romans also held ghost beliefs, practicing ancestor worship and holding festivals like the Limanura to appease restless spirits, which were often seen as malevolent. And so you can say this in the aspects of how this, circles itself into, or goes into the realms of spirituality too, or religion, and then how in case in point, the aspects of death and are considered quite different depending on this certain regions or philosophies. So, for instance, most of the time, Judeo-Christians, they believe that it is an occasion where you dress and lament and it's mournful. But on the other hand, that's not, there's different sects to that about the balance between mourning and celebration of a person's life. But, when you get mostly in the aspects of Eastern philosophy, the aspects of someone dying or of that life is they dress in white because it's seen the aspects of celebration and hope that, you are, this world is not of that person, and from what I understand, and you are of the freedom to go on to another aspects of life. Of your soul goes on. Is something to continue to celebrate. So, with that said, I'm going to move on here. It says the origin of ghost beliefs are deeply tied to cultural understandings of death and afterlife. In many ancient societies, ghosts were not merely feared, but were also a part of daily life. And so this goes into the aspects of, before the turn of the century, when you get into the aspects of that middle ground between the Industrial Revolution and the agricultural aspects of the farm life of being predominantly there, centered around agriculture and versus industrial means of culture. At that time, when people were really focusing, and that was a part of the main economy, agriculture, be a farming and building crops and being a part of the soil and being a part of the land, making what knowing where everything comes, making what you have. The aspects of life and death was seen quite differently. I mean, even the aspects of, from what I'm remembering and understanding, the aspects of someone dying in the family, they would have their bodies still, and they would be in the home, and you would just still be as an aspect of appreciation that they are mourning these people, as and their family is abundant and are around them. And then the aspects of showing children the sensitive subject matter of death, they would see their dead family members, and they would that would just be a part of the culture, versus the aspects of, when we get into the Industrial Revolution and then get more and more, advanced when it comes to the aspects of technology and culture. People moved away from those kind of concepts of simply seeing that, the simplicity of saying that life and death and family are the compass of everything, and that when someone dies, that you still have them, you have their body with you, and then you properly bury them, of course. But all of these aspects of having your younger generation to understand how the the aspects of the different cycles of life work, that kind of perished out. It was translated to something completely different as time moved on. And that's something that goes to say too with the aspects of the thought process of ghosts and generational cultural values about these things. What does that also factor into how people view the subject matter too? All right, so let me see. All right, the origin of ghost belief deeply tied to cultural understandings of death and afterlife. In many ancient societies, ghosts were not merely feared, but were also a part of daily life, sometimes worshipped or even captured for labor, reflecting a society's intimate relationship with mortality due to high rates of death of disease, famine, and poor living conditions. In the Mesoamerican cultures, the celebration of the dead evolved into what is now known as the Day of the Dead. So, and I did do a episode about that too. And if you're interested, go on and check that one out. All right, where the community honors deceased loved ones, originally linked to the goddess, and forgive me for the pronunciation, I'll try my best here. Mitura Chaliha. I say ghosts were often believed to be created at the time of death. So carrying the memory or personality of the deceased and traveling to a netherworld, another world, where they led a life similar to the living. Though they could cause misfortune if not properly honored with offerings of food and drink. So the idea that ghosts were tied to unresolved matters such as improper burial, sin, or unfinished business was a common theme across cultures. To rid oneself of ghosts, people would seek spiritual authorities like priests or doctors who perform exorcisms, recommended spells, or things like this, or in ancient Egypt even wrote letters directly to the deceased. So the word ghost itself originates from Old English ghast, which means breath, spirit, or soul, derived from Proto-Western Germanic gastaska, and ultimately linked to the Proto-Indian European root associated with fear and excitement. And see how the aspects... hold on just... See what I mean by the aspects of how language really pronounces the meaning of culture and value when it is considered in this context about everything. It really brings light to that. And what I'm talking about what I talk about on Fridays of how impactful language is into the conscience of cultural values and thought processes behind it. All right, so originally the term encompassed breath, life, and the human spirit was used in Christian contexts like the Holy Ghost, before evolving to specifically denote a disembodied spirit of a dead person, especially one haunting the living by the late 14th century. All right, so I am going to get into more aspects of this. So Ghosts of Stories. And this is by history.com. So they asked the question, what is a ghost? So the concept of ghost was known as a specter, which is based on the ancient idea that a person's spirit exists separately from his or her body and may continue to exist after that person dies. Because of this idea, many societies began to use funeral rituals as a way of ensuring that the dead person's spirit would not return to haunt the living. And so you see about this aspect of how concepts and belief evolve into rituals and where that come from. That's quite interesting. So places that were haunted are usually believed to be associated with some occurrence or emotion in the ghost's past. They are often a former home or a place where he or she died. Aside from actual ghostly apparitions, traditional signs of haunting range from strange noises, lights, or odors or breezes to the displacement of objects, bells that ring spontaneously, or musical instruments that seem to play on their own. So early ghost sightings. In the 1st century AD, the great Roman author and statesman Pliny the Younger recorded one of the first notable ghost stories in his letters, which became famous for their vivid accounts of life during the heyday of the Roman Empire. Pliny recorded that the specter of an old man with a long beard, rattling chains, and was haunting his house in Athens. So the Greek writer Lucian and Pliny's fellow Roman Plautus also wrote no memorable ghost stories. So centuries later in AD, or 556 AD, the first Poltergeists are ghosts that cause physical disturbance, such as loud noises or objects falling or being thrown around, was reported at a farmhouse in Germany. The poltergeist tormented the family living there by throwing stones and starting fires, among other things. Gee whiz. To be a fly on that wall, I'm telling you. So 3 famous historical ghosts. One of the most frequently reported ghost sightings in England dates back to the 16th century. This is Anne Boleyn, which is, of all the lore, and that it makes a whole lot of sense of why these people are noted to be cited here. And Anne Boleyn, and the second wife, which is the second wife of King Henry VIII, and mother Queen of Elizabeth I, which was executed to the Tower of London in May of 1536 after being accused of witchcraft, treason, incest, and adultery. So sightings of Boleyn's ghost have been reported to other towers as well as various other locations, including her childhood home, Hever Castle in Kent. America's own rich traditions of historical ghosts begin with one of the most illustrious illustrations found of the founding father of Benjamin Franklin. Beginning in the late 19th century, Franklin's ghost was seen near the library of the American Philosophical Society in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Some reports held that the statue of Franklin in front of the society comes to life and dances in the streets. Wow. Can you imagine seeing something like that? What, baby girl? What? Okay. Hey, you got to be quiet because I'm almost finished wrapping up, okay? Okay. All right. Though many ghost sightings have been reported at the White House in Washington, D.C. over the years, perhaps no political figure had made so frequent an appearance in the afterlife as Abraham Lincoln. So the nation's 16th president, who was assassinated with a bullet in April of 1865, Lincoln, who was formerly a lawyer and congressman of Illinois, is said to have been wandering near the old Springfield Capitol building, as well as his nearby law offices. At the White House, everyone from first ladies to the queens to prime ministers have been reported as being seen as ghosts, or a ghost appearance of them, or feeling the presence of Honest Abe, particularly of him. I'm sorry. Let me say that again. These people have, from queens to prime ministers, have reported seeing the ghost of Abraham Lincoln. All right. They weren't the ghost. They have reported to have seen it. Sorry for that misreading that here, particularly during the administration of Franklin D. Roosevelt, another president who guided the country through a time of great upheaval and war. So haunted places. I'm going to end on, I'll talk about a little bit more here. So haunted places. Some locations simply seem to lend themselves to hauntings, perhaps due to the dramatic or the grisly events that occurred there in the past. So, over the centuries, sightings of speculators' aims have been reported on famous battlefields around the world, including the important battle sites from the English Civil War in the 17th century and the bloody Civil War battlefield of Gettysburg and the World War I site of the Gallipoli near Turkey, and the Somme in northern France. All right, so 7 famously haunted places around the U.S. here. All right, it says that another particular active center of paranormal activity is the HMS Queen Mary, a cruise ship built in 1936 from the Cunard White Star Line. So after serving the British Royal Navy in World War II, the 81,000-ton ship retired in Long Beach, California in 1967. The plan was to turn it into a floating luxury hotel and resort. Since then, the Queen Mary has become notorious for seeing spirits, with more than 50 ghosts reported over the years. So the ship's last chief engineer, John Smith, reported hearing unexpected sounds and voices from the area near the ship's bow, and almost the same location was doomed British aircraft cruiser, the Corcoran, had appeared. A hole had appeared when it sank after an accidental wartime crash that killed more than 300 sailors aboard. So among major cities, New York is especially rich with ghost stories, And so Igor would announce to that, rest his soul too, the actor. And Dan Aykroyd would announce to that. And so it makes quite sense that the storyline of the Ghostbusters, or why they're so predominantly adamant to stress that they're in New York, because, case in point, that's the pivotal scene of, paranormal activity here. And then also to add on to that, Dan Aykroyd in itself is a person who greatly believes in the aspects of the paranormal, the afterlife. And it goes without saying, because of his father, his family, they were respected, his father and everything, and his family respected paranormalists in their field. All right, so among major cities, New York is especially rich with ghost stories. So the spirit of Peter, excuse me for this pronunciation, Stuart Vincent, the city's last Dutch colonial governor, has been seen stomping around the East Village on his wooden leg since shortly after his death in 1672. The author Mark Twain is believed to have haunted the stairwell of his one-time village apartment building, while the ghost of poet Dylan Thomas is said to sometimes occupy his usual corner table at West Village White House Horse Tavern, where he drank a fatal 18 shots of scotch in 1953. Perhaps the most famous New York ghost is the Aaron Burr, who served as vice president under Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson, sorry guys. But he is best known, unfortunately. That's all. But I would greatly advocate for y'all to read more about Aaron Burr, because he's much more than that. So, than just being the person who killed Alexander Hamilton. There's much more to his story. In a duel in 1804. So, hush. So, let me say, get back to that. Shh, hush. So, let me get back to that. Killing Alexander Hamilton in a duel in 1804. So, Burr's ghost is said to have roamed the streets of his old neighborhood, also the West Village. So Burr's spirit activity is focused primarily on one restaurant, one if by land, two if by sea, which is located in a borough, street building that was once Burr's carriage house there. So, I'm going to wrap up. It's really interesting in the aspects of ghosts and how the supernatural is placed in the consciousness of culture or people's minds. And a lot of times, these things, even though it's off cups, if it can get in the aspects when you're talking about this subject matter, but a lot of times the heart of things being passed on from generations to generations. They're rooted from something that really pinpoints to people's cultural values, and that's something to say as an extra layer when you think about the aspects of the ghosties and the spirits and that subject matter, especially when we go in the aspects of thinking about Halloween here. All right, so I would greatly like to know what you all think. Please feel free to reach out to me. And the best way to do so is shoot me an email. That'd be greatly appreciated. All right, so tune in, turn up, and definitely take care out there. Bye-bye for now.
Mommy, put that.
Oh, I see.